everybody, and welcome to Game Time with Jack and Josh. And I'm very proud and pleased to announce that we have our first ever professional athlete, IndyCar driver, IndyCar on Fox commentator, lost to a 16-year-old in Dancing with the Stars, podcaster, James Hinchcliffe. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you very much for having me on, boys. Appreciate the invite.
And well, to start off, I'm a big IndyCar fan, as most people might know me. Just for someone who does not know IndyCar, for most of our fans, they're from our school. So
Mhm.
for someone who doesn't know something about IndyCar, how would you describe it in one sentence?
Best four-wheel racing on the planet is how I describe it. It's very similar to Formula One in the way the cars look, but the level of competitiveness because of the nature of the rules, I think brings a different element and makes it a lot more of a drivers' championship than a lot of the other series out there. So it's a great way to go racing.
Um, yeah, I completely agree. Fast racing on Earth. I call it the most intense racing on Earth. Um, you know, with me, I fell in love with IndyCar. I remember my first IndyCar race I remember watching was the 2016 Indy 500, and I
I remember
remember,
it well.
yeah, I remember that silver bullet of Will Power. I remember because when I first tuned in, they were talking about Will, and I remember just seeing the speeds of it, and it was just so enthralling. Watching the Cars films. That's what really gave me the bug. But then watching that 500 really bit me and really got me to the sport. So I want you to take us back. How did you get bit by the racing bug?
I blame my dad for my addiction to racing. Grew up in Toronto area, but my dad was from England and just was a huge motorsports fan. So, growing up, I kind of had a bit of a different experience than a lot of my friends in that my dad wasn't a hockey guy, my dad was a racing guy. And literally, as far back as I can remember, it was, watching Formula One races Sunday mornings with dad and then IndyCar races Sunday afternoons. And that was it, man. That was life. That was all I cared about when I was a kid. And that was way before I ever drove anything. It was just a passion for the sport as a fan.
I want to let Jack say some questions because I want to split the spotlight between me and you. But
Yeah, so just first off, I just want to say that Josh here is the biggest IndyCar fan I know, and he was ecstatic that you agreed to do this interview. I just want to thank you once again for taking the time with us here. So transitioning to your career, you've had 6 wins in IndyCar, but which one means the most to you and why?
Honestly, the first one I think is always pretty special. I didn't manage to win a 500, and I didn't manage to win a race at my home track in Toronto. I think only those two things maybe could have beat it. The victory at Long Beach is a big deal just because that's after Indy kind of the next big race, and that's what everybody wants to win. But for me, that first one is always special because it justifies everything that you have done in your life up to that point. All the sacrifices that you made, that your family made, the sleepless nights, the missed birthday parties and weddings, the hours in the gym, the begging, borrowing, and stealing money to stay on the racetrack, everything that it takes to get to that point, and then validating that you belong there, that you could race against the best and win. I think that's a feeling that never goes away, and it's a memory that I'll always cherish for sure.
Yeah, and as a swimmer myself, obviously not at the professional level yet, but racing against the best, I think that's one of the most important things to me. Like whenever I dive into the pool, I take a look around me at my competitors, and my only goal is to win. And I'm sure you have a similar mindset during your everyday racing experience. So transitioning to you had a crash in 2015, and it was a pretty scary experience. So I was wondering if you could walk us through your mindset coming back from that.
Yeah, well, racing's kind of unique in the sense that while any athlete can get hurt doing what they do, drivers can die. There's no two ways about it. It's an inherently dangerous sport. We've made it, exponentially safer than it was back, 20, 30, 40 years ago, but there's always going to be that element there. And I think drivers just sort of accept that risk and they don't really, put themselves and their safety first. They put winning first. They put the competition first. And so, I got hurt, like you said, and it was very serious. Nearly lost my life. Took me out of the car for the rest of that season. But the first thing that I wanted to know, kind of when I woke up and understood what happened was when could I get back into the car? Because I think it's just the athlete mentality, right? All of us just want to compete. All of us just want to win. That feeling is what, drives you to push yourself as an athlete through training, through competitions, whatever it is. And, never once through that whole kind of recovery process did I ever consider stopping. Did I ever have a change of heart in, how I felt or how passionate I felt about going racing? It wasn't even a question. The only question was when, not if.
Um, I do want to talk about your comeback the next year, getting the pole for the 100 for running. I mean, those 4 laps. Can you give someone who doesn't know? Because I know your lap. It was spectacular. Your 4 laps at the speedway. But given it's like, because most fans don't, most fans of the show don't really know much about IndyCar. Can you give them a little insight about how grueling and how demanding those 4 laps in qualifying are, especially that pole lap?
Yeah, I mean, Indy qualifying is pretty unique. So we don't do it anywhere else the way we do it at Indy. At Indy, you have to go out for 4 laps, as you mentioned, and it's your average speed of those 4 laps. So, going fast is obviously important, but also staying consistent is important because the tires you put on brand new tires for a qualifying run, but you're working them so hard that they're degrading, they're falling off even in just a 4 lap run. And so the speed difference between your first lap and your last lap can sometimes be significant. You've got to try to balance the setup to make sure it doesn't fall off too much. But to get the ultimate speed out of the car, it essentially has to be the sketchiest setup that you're willing to drive. So, Indy cars rely on downforce to get around the corners quickly. That's essentially just the air pushing the car into the racetrack for more grip. But when you add downforce and you add grip, what you take away is straight line speed. So more downforce equals more drag, and drag means less speed. Obviously, you want maximum speed in qualifying. So the trick about Indy qualifying is to just take off as much downforce as you dare, and try to hang on to the thing for 4 laps. And you're turning in at the end of the front and back straight to turn 1 or turn 3 at 240 plus miles an hour. And the goal is to not lift. So you're turning into a 90-degree corner at 240 and you're not even cracking the throttle, never mind braking or downshifting. And you're just balancing the car on the absolute edge. The car is very unstable. You are constantly adjusting the tools that you have in the car. There's a few different mechanical things that drivers can do. You're looking at the flags on the grandstand to see which way the wind is blowing, because the cars are so sensitive to the aerodynamics that even a gust of wind at that speed can make you crash, and you have to almost anticipate what the car is going to do. So it's 4 laps. It takes 3.5 minutes to do a run, 10 miles, because the laps are 2.5 miles long. But it feels like an eternity sometimes because you're white knuckling it the entire time. And most drivers will tell you that qualifying at the speedway is the scariest thing that an IndyCar driver does all year long.
Would you say what is more intense, those 4 laps or the last four of the 500?
Well, I think it depends what kind of position you're in. If you're cruising around in seventh by yourself for the last 4 laps, it's probably qualifying. But you look at the last 3 years at Indy. If you've been tuning into the 500 the last few years, you've been really lucky because we've had 3 races that went right down to the wire. And I got to think, in those moments, I was never in a position where it was kind of last lap fighting for the win there. But you got to think that that's the most pressure that a driver can really feel all year long, and in your entire career, really. So, like I said, 3 years in a row we've had a banger finish. You should probably watch this year because we're trending pretty well. Could
Yeah,
be
for
good.
those listening, tune in May 25th on Fox. I'm doing as a free service.
Appreciate that.
For non-IndyCar fans or IndyCar fans who are trying to get into the sport, what would you say are like some of the key things to focus on when starting to watch the sport?
I mean, I think like any sport, man, the two things that people really relate to um, are the personalities, which IndyCar has plenty. So pick your guy, pick your girl, pick your driver, and learn about them, because there's a lot of cool personalities in the sport. And I think, people find athletes that either remind them of something in themselves or something they wish they could be or wish they could do. And then once you've got someone to cheer for, it makes it a lot easier to watch and a lot more fun to watch. But the other thing that people really love about sport is watching somebody do something that they can't do, right? It's admiring the talent and the ability that these athletes have. Where racing's a bit of a challenge, if I'm honest, is so few people have had the chance to drive an Indy car at speed to know how hard it is to really relate to what the athletes are doing. So yeah, I could watch the Masters and be like, yeah, I know how hard it is for Rory to make that shot because I've tried golf and I do 100 on the front nine, right? I can watch a football game and watch, Tom Brady hit a 30-yard pass at a running receiver. I'm like, well, I can't even throw a football 30 yards, never mind at a moving target, anticipating where it's going to be. So it's the appreciation for this difficult thing that these athletes are doing. People equate driving a race car to driving a road car if they've never had a chance to try it. And so that's not very hard. That's not very impressive. So people think that we just, sit there and turn left. And that's just not the case. So I think for new fans, really, really try to dig into learning about what it takes to drive a car at the limit, what it takes to manage fuel levels and managing tires and the racecraft and the strategy. There's so much strategy that happens in racing. It is a bit of a complex sport, but frankly, so is football. I mean, the basics are simple: throw it in the end zone, get a point, finish first, win the race. But the details, the nuance is pretty intense in both, and you can enjoy it, I think, at either level. Kind of at the simple level of, oh yeah, I'm watching these top three; they're going to get a trophy and spray champagne at the end. Or you can really break into how the two-stop strategy works versus the three-stop strategy, and things like that. It's a fun sport to follow in that sense because you can kind of make it anything you want.
Um, I wanted to talk about like your insight as well. I know you started broadcasting in 2020, after you lost your drive with Arrow McLaren, um, or Smith Peterson actually, as it was then. What made you decide to shift away from full time into broadcasting? And then how is your broadcasting journey, like how have you seen your broadcasting journey so far through NBC and now on Fox?
Well, it's interesting. I had a really unique opportunity when I was younger, where I was still in the junior categories, trying to make my break into IndyCar, and I got invited to kind of hang out in one of the broadcasts for the international feed of IndyCar back in the day. So it wasn't even playing here; it wasn't the big production. It was a very secondary, small kind of three-person operation that did the international feed at the time. And I got the opportunity to go sit in on a race. And I kind of enjoyed just hanging out with the guy that was in there. And we were talking about the race and watching. And technically, I was broadcasting, but didn't even really understand or appreciate what was happening. And throughout the next 2 years, I was still, again, in this junior level, but I was at all the races. And this guy kept inviting me up into the booth just to kind of hang out during the races and be part of this broadcast. And so I got this opportunity to sort of try it, I guess, before I'd even ever raced an IndyCar. And in that time, I enjoyed doing it. And I sort of always thought to myself, when I stop racing full time, I think I'd like to look into, what this could be, what this could look like as a next step in my career. And then luckily I made it into IndyCar and did, my 11 years there. And when I was contemplating kind of hanging up the helmet, I mentioned to NBC that I was, thinking about stopping at the end of 21, and they were immediately just like, yeah, we'd love to have you, man. So I was really lucky in that sense that the timing was good. There was an opening and an opportunity, and jumped right in, with both feet, and had a great introduction to the broadcasting world, kind of full time with NBC and the team there, Diff and T-Bell, everybody behind the scenes. Learned so much in those first couple of years, and really, really enjoyed it. Got the opportunity to, because of that, do some Formula One broadcasting as well. So I've been kind of doing that on the side, and taking my off weekends and traveling to F1 races and doing that. but it's been great. And then, was obviously super fortunate to get picked up by Fox when the transition happened, over the off season. And now with Will and T-Bell again and the new crew at Fox, it's just kind of the beginning of a new era, I think, for IndyCar's broadcasting, certainly, and another fun opportunity to me to work with a new group of people and a new company. So it's been a lot of fun.
What is your favorite part of the transition to broadcasting full time?
It's funny. I think what I like about it is how many parallels there are to a race weekend as a driver. And for me, obviously any athlete, preparation is number one, right? And I take the same level of intensity in the preparation for my new job as I did for my old job. And so it's fun for me to like get the stat packs on a Monday and go through all the information and make sure I'm up to speed on everything that I could possibly be up to speed on and that I'm super prepared for whatever happens. And then at the end of the day, the race is kind of a rush. Live TV is kind of a rush. You get that countdown from your producer in the ear and it's boom. We are live to 100+ countries. Millions of people are watching. You can't screw up. There's a lot of pressure. There's what we call a run of show. Basically, it's the list of segments or features or whatever that we want to get in this segment before the first ad break and in this segment before the second ad break, and it's this interview and whatever. And we have a finite time window. If somebody talks too long on an interview, we've got to cut down something else. And you're making those decisions on the fly in real time. It's like how you're calling a strategy in a race, right? You can have your plan, and then by turn one, your plan's out the window and you're having to just kind of shoot from the hip. And so I think that pressure of the live broadcast and the challenge of kind of thinking on your feet when things don't go exactly to plan, it's a bit of a rush, and it's the part I think I like the most. It's the most challenging part of it, but it kind of reminds me of, it's a fraction, but it's a little bit of that same feeling as you get, when you're in competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you had one piece of advice for aspiring broadcasters like ourselves, what would that be?
It's interesting. I mean, I am the worst person to ask because my advice would be become a professional athlete, retire, and then hope that there's a TV job for you, because that's what I did. But I'm fortunate that I've worked with a lot of really, really good professional broadcasters, guys like Lee Diffie, guys like Will Buxton, women like Laura Winter, and stuff on the F1 side. And I've heard them, Kevin Lee, I've heard them get asked this question a lot. And the answer is the same from all. And so there's clearly some truth to it. Do everything. Take every opportunity, every job. Some are going to suck. The hours are going to be terrible. The pay is going to be worse. It's not going to be what you want to do, but reps are so important. It's like anything, the more practice you get, the better you're going to get at it. The more opportunities are going to present themselves. I get a lot of people reaching out to me, and again, I've sat next to these actual professional broadcasters who get this same question. That's, I want to be a motorsports journalist, or I want to be a motorsports broadcaster, and they're like, that's just the wrong mindset. You can't think of it like that. You either want to be a broadcaster or you want to do something in racing. But trying to pigeonhole yourself into being a motorsports broadcaster, there is no path for that. There's no advice anybody can give you on how to do that. So whether it's racing or whether it's baseball or whether it's football, you kind of have to ignore the end goal at the beginning in terms of the sport you want to be in. Do any sport, do every sport, learn how to do sports you know nothing about. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, and just take every and all opportunities that come, because all that experience is great. The TV world in the grand scheme of things is pretty small, and you might work with someone on some crappy job that you don't want to do, that 10 years from now is an SVP at a network and remembers your work ethic back then and has followed your career since then. And those relationships that you can build sometimes lead to opportunities down the road. So from the real professionals that have been through it, that's the advice, is just never say no and never give up.
Never, not never say no to.
Exactly.
Actually, speaking of that little reference, I'm gonna shift a little bit away from IndyCar for a little bit and talk about your off-track stuff. Speaking
Mhm.
of off-track, Off Track with Hinch and Rossi. I know you're a podcaster. You had the mayor on air as well, I think back in the past.
That's
See, I
right.
did my research.
Good
I did
call.
my
Yes, sir.
homework.
Well done. Yeah,
Um,
preparation. It's key.
I want to ask firstly about Off Track. Why did you um why did you continuate, I guess, the mayor on air with Alexander Rossi with Off Track?
Yeah, it was interesting. So the Mare on Air we did, I think, for 2 seasons, and it was kind of supported by IndyCar. And the guy that was working for the series at the time that was kind of helping me out, he left IndyCar and started his own business, and so it was kind of going to die. And as much as I hate to give him any credit for anything ever, Sam was kind of the one that came up with the idea of the three of us doing a show. He had a contact that worked for a company that was looking for some new podcasts to kind of bring onto their platform. And so we sort of just like, well, hey, I've got a little bit of an audience from the Mayor on Air. Let's just add Rossi at them and let's see what happens. And the answer was nothing for a very long time. We did the show, kind of sporadically for I think 4 years before it started having really the kind of format that it has today. I say format as loosely as you can use that term. Um, and it just keeps growing, man. Like it kind of really came into its own 2 years ago. We signed with Sirius, who have been incredible partners and everything. Um, and so it's fun. It's a lot of work, but it's cool, walking through the paddock at a given race weekend and having fans come up to you and make some reference from the show. Or but what's worrying is how many people in the industry listen to it. I get like head up at like big companies and teams and stuff like, oh, I heard the podcast. You guys are listening to this? Like, man, we got to really watch what we say, I think.
Yeah, I remember there was a period where you guys were joking about how you guys only had 3 people listening.
Yeah.
How
And one
many
of them was on their
300
Apple
people?
Watch.
Yeah, at our school, it's really like the teachers because we've
Oh,
advertised our podcast
yeah.
around the school, and we've heard feedback from the teachers, so we have to make sure that
Yes.
Yeah.
we don't get in trouble for anything
There's
from this.
always
Yeah.
someone listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our coaches have been listening, so they know about the show. They said, I listened to the show yesterday. I was like, oh, really? Oh, um, and if an opportunity comes up where Thim is gone, you need a producer. We have one right here for you.
All right. Noted. Noted. I'll
Executive
keep that
producer.
in mind. Yeah.
Um, Next up for I guess more off track stuff, you danced a little bit. Dance with the Stars.
Danced. Past tense. Yes.
Yes. Which is not very IndyCar, not very, prolific, but what was harder actually for you, dancing or driving an IndyCar?
I mean, driving an Indy car is harder for sure. But what's so hard about that show is, I mean, I've been racing my entire life, right? There's a natural element to it. You can put me in anything with four wheels and I'll be 90% of the way there in the first 2 minutes, right? As a 5'10" white guy from Canada, like this was my dance experience before the show. Like, it was a big jump to go from, the Macarena to ballroom. Um, so it was a ton of work in a short period of time, but athletes do really well on that show because we're so competitive and because we're used to training, we're used to coaching, we're used to getting feedback and then directly applying it. So, as you duly noted, I lost out to a 16-year-old gymnast. But as athletes were first, second, and third the year that I did it, because there's just something about that format that I think resonates with people that are used to kind of pushing themselves and being super competitive. I will say dancing was scarier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could not go on a show like that and dance in front of
Oh, me
anything.
neither.
Yeah.
The best I know is a couple like shimmy shimmies and that's it.
Yeah. You're
But
already ahead of where I was.
I recall listening to an episode of Off Track, and I believe the question was brought up about like who in IndyCar would be the best for that.
Mhm.
Um, I know Elio did it. Might be
Yeah.
too old to do it now, but who of the young generation do you think would have the best chance of like actually doing one better than you and actually winning?
Well, look, I heard that that Joseph always wanted to do it back in the day, and I don't know if you could convince him to do it today, but I think he'd be great for it because he's hyper competitive. He's got a great personality, great sense of humor. I think he can be performative when he needs to be, even though he calls himself an introvert. But then also, I don't know if you know this, and I think we mentioned on the show, but David Malukas has like ballroom dancing in his background. Like maybe his mom was a dancer, and so I think he did a little dancing when he was younger. Um, and so yeah, I think he would be like he's like your sleeper guy because he actually has a little bit of that from like a kid. So he got drilled on some of the essentials at a young age and probably like, never forgets like riding a bike for him. So I would love to see what he could do.
That would be really interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
like maybe a Pato as well, a Ward or
He would
Herta.
just be like pure personality, man. I mean, he could even be completely crap at dancing, but he would make it far in the show just based on his like energy and his persona. He would be great. We should just do the whole field. Let's just pick 12 guys and just do like a season just IndyCar drivers.
Playoff style.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to see that. So keeping on the lighter side, say we're dropping you into our high school's gym class, and you get to pick any sport. What sport are you picking to dominate the rest of the field in?
Dominate. Ugh. Um, I don't know, man. Zero. It's crazy. Like I didn't really play any sports as a kid because I started racing karts at 9. I think I played soccer for a year before that, but then once I was karting, it's all I wanted to do. All my spare time was dedicated to that. I never wanted to get hurt playing another sport and miss a chance to drive my go-kart. Obviously, growing up in Canada, hockey is everything, right? Um, but kids break wrists playing hockey. They pull their knees, they do collarbones, and I was just never willing to take that risk, so I never played, which I regret now because I love hockey as a sport. I love watching it, but I don't know, man. I mean, I'm a pretty good runner. I could do like long distance running. There you go. I could do that probably.
Yeah,
If
look out
if
there.
if I get a chance to go to a race, I will definitely challenge you to a race.
Oh man.
Josh
No,
is a
I'm old and
soccer.
retired. I'm washed up now. I was really good when I was, in IndyCar full time and training like crazy, but now I'm a casual runner.
I do want to mention you're a mayor. You're a politician. You're mayor of a town,
Uh,
Hinchtown.
Hinchtown. Yes, sir.
Where did Hinchtown come from? Because
Hinchtown was a funny idea that came around from a guy named Jim Bowie who used to kind of help me on the off track side of things, on the kind of marketing side of the sport. He was the one that first really educated me on how important sponsorship was and how you don't get to go racing without sponsor money and how to appeal to sponsors and things like that. So, at that time, I think we made that website in like 2005 or something like that. It was, the internet was still young and God, I feel old being able to say that. Uh, and a lot of drivers and kind of starting to get their own websites, and so we kind of spent one night looking through IndyCar drivers, NASCAR drivers, F1 drivers, everybody's personal websites to kind of get an idea of what people were doing, what was good, what was bad. And we came to two conclusions. One is they were all the same, and two was they all sucked. They were all really boring. And so we kind of sat around and tried to think of something different, just to stand out. And the idea was create this fictional internet town, call it Hinchtown, make myself the mayor of it, and that's what we did. And I'll be honest with you, man, the first year, 2 years, it was kind of weird, and people didn't really know what we meant by that. They're like, so sorry, he is in politics, he's not in politics. I don't understand what's happening here. Are you moonlighting as a politician during the week? And then it just kind of caught on, and I was early to social media and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, now I get introduced as the mayor of Hinchtown as much as I do James Hinchcliffe. So it's a thing that sort of stuck, and it was very successful when we were doing it.
you know, um, if someone came up to you, like say I came up to you at a race and I asked what three things that I needed to do to reach the potential of working in sports, particularly motorsports, which is what I want to do. I would like to work in some capacity, especially in IndyCar. What would you say?
I would say, a lot of it's kind of similar to, the broadcasting advice you were talking about earlier. The number one thing, and it applies to anything, man. It applies to an athlete trying to reach the top level of sport. It applies to an entrepreneur trying to start a business. It applies to somebody that's got a goal in a specific industry. Nothing beats hard work. The work ethic is the single most important thing for success in this world. If you can outwork the competition, opportunities will present themselves to you. So that's number one. The second one is really, push yourself, get outside your comfort zone, do things that you convince yourself to say yes to things you normally wouldn't. It get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that's a huge part of it. And then third is, again, it doesn't matter the business or the sport or the industry or anything. I use it in the racing sense where, I say to people that racing isn't about cars or engines or tires. It's about people. And the right group of people together can accomplish incredible things, even against, fantastic odds. And I really believe that's true in anything. It's true in business. It's true in life. And so it's, the third piece of advice would be good to people, build relationships, just give everybody respect, be very respectful, because like I said, there's someone you could work with, that's a running coffees now, that is going to be the head of a company or a network or something down the road. And you just never know. And so building those relationships, being good to people, working hard, get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think those are the three pieces of advice I could give you for what you were asking, but I think it honestly applies to a lot of different things.
Need people and people.
Exactly right. Treat all people as people.
I want to also further talk about racing. If you could relive one race in your career, um, no, but you can't change the outcome, just re-experience it. Which race would it be and why?
Honestly, man, I think it's that first win. I think it's that first win in IndyCar at St. Pete. And again, it's the feeling of relief. It's so funny. Like, yes, you're happy and you're excited and you're pumped and you're all those things, but the feeling of relief in that first one is so hard to explain. And it's why you see in motorsports, and there's other sports where it's similar, like you kind of break that dam, right? When you have that first bit of success, future success is so much easier because you can do it. You're not holding yourself back in any way anymore. And it's amazing how an athlete's kind of mental approach and mindset can change after a big victory like that. And so that feeling of relief, that feeling of vindication, my whole family, minus my brother, four of my five family members were there. Getting to share that moment with my parents was incredibly special, for me. So that's the one that, yeah, if you could hit rewind and just go be a passenger in that day again, that would be pretty cool.
I want to let you know that the meeting might close in a couple of minutes. Do you mind rejoining
Sure.
if you have time? I just want to make sure like we're not going over how much time you have for today.
Yeah, I mean, I've got till about noon, if that's all right.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, if it cuts, I'll just rejoin and we'll
Sure. Same link, or
um
does it have to be a different link?
same link. I
Okay.
think it's same link. I think same link should work. Same link should work, guys. Okay, next question I have. If it's more of a lighthearted one, it's more lighthearted. So we're going to like lighthearted and kind of like serious ones. So you're stranded on a desert island with three drivers. They can be, yeah, they can be current or past. Who are they, and what's everyone's job on the island?
That's a good one. Okay. I'm gonna say uh okay, I'll say Ryan Hunter-Reay,
Big yacht guy.
because big yacht guy, and he's a fisherman and he's a free diver. So he would know how to feed us by going fishing. So that's his job. And you know what? You could also put Kirkwood in that same role. But we'll go with Hunter-Reay. So he would do that. I think you need a Rossi type guy there. because he's the one that he's very good at problem solving. He's also, he's nice and controlled emotions, I think, which is important in that scenario. He'd be the guy that could, he'll figure out how to make fire. He'll figure out how to balance the pH in the water before we drink it. Like he'll do all that, and he'll also be the cook because he really, he'll know how to smoke the meat that Ryan catches. He'll make the best fish. So I think that would be a good one. And then what else do we need? Who can build stuff? Who's good with their hands to like build a shelter? Charlie Kimball's pretty handy. So I think Kimball would be a good guy for like building the habitat. So we've got Hunter A, Rossi, Kimball, and then I'm just, managing. I just gonna sit back and
You're just there.
supervise.
You're just there chilling with a little like cup of because I think you guys drink a lot. Bourbon.
Bourbon, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's bourbon
You're a
on this
big
island.
bourbon
Oh, we're
guy.
gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what is the likelihood that this turns into a Lord of the Flies scenario? Yeah.
With that group,
Yeah.
7.5. Yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah,
Who I feel like Rossi would just kill all you guys. Like
eventually, he
yeah.
would just kill us all, but he would do it in our sleep, probably. So, like, whatever. I don't mind.
Keeping on the topic of chaotic moments, what's one moment from the broadcast team that we didn't see on air but was hilarious or chaotic behind the scenes?
Dude, the funniest thing that's ever happened to me in the booth was Portland 23, I think. And it must have been in the race. And one of the Foyt cars had this sponsor just for the weekend. And it was called Bavarian Meats. And it was so random. Like none of us have ever heard of
What?
this company. Evidently, they make like jerky and like
Okay.
meat sticks and stuff like that, right? Like Slim Jim style
Big
stuff.
meat guy.
Big meat guy. And it was on one of the Foyt cars. I don't remember whose. And it was like so poorly. Like the car was all red and they just put this blue lettering on it. Like there was no, it was like
Oh,
someone
I
just
believe
went
that's
to the
Peterson.
locals.
That must have been Peterson.
Was it on Benjamin? Yeah, maybe. It may
Yeah,
have
because
been.
his car was
Yeah.
like red. His car was red that year.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's probably on Peterson's car. But like they put, like, you could not have put less effort into getting this sticker on the.
As an aspiring broadcaster myself, one of my favorite things when watching any sort of sporting event is the broadcast and the process behind that.
Mhm.
So I just that's always been like one of the most interesting things to me is like the behind the scenes, how everything works with the producer and the segments, and it kind of like to me the broadcaster is so important because they tell the story of the game. Or the story of the match or race or whatever sporting event it is. And I feel like that's kind of what I want to go into at some point in time. It's just kind of narrate and like do it with my own style. And obviously, you're doing an exceptional job at NBC now Fox. So it's been really inspiring to see your journey in that regard. So
Well,
just wanted to
appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. So
well,
you want to be on air, you want to be a commentator, you want to be play by play, you want to call sports. That's the goal.
absolutely, yeah. Doesn't matter what
Very
sport.
cool. Very cool. Yeah, and
Thank you.
again, like it's one of those things where I mean, you already kind of said it. The more you understand about how the production works, the better you're going to be at your job too. Like again, I didn't come from a production background. I didn't come from a production education or a TV education. And so for me, my first few races, I sit in the booth and I talk, right? There are screens I look at, there's a button I can talk to somebody and they talk to me. And that was the extent of me understanding how this worked. But once I understood how the whole, how the sausage is made, basically, I spent time in the truck, watched what the producer does, understood how the director sees things and does things, watched what the pit producers are doing, and understand the flow of information, the flow of communication. So that way I can actually do my job better from in the booth because I know at this phase of the race, they're going through that. Maybe not the best time for me to get on the talkback button and ask for XYZ, right? Whereas in this phase of the race, I know that everyone's kind of on autopilot. And now would be a good time for me to jump in and ask for this. Or if I see something, then I'm like, hey, let's get a camera over here. I think this might be about to happen. I can be a lot better at helping tell that story. Like you said, I mean, that's ultimately our jobs is you're telling the story of what's happening. And the more you understand how the whole production works, the better you can kind of control the tools.
I want to shift back to racing. I actually have three questions that are kind of consecutive. My first question is, will you ever do a 500 again?
No, I don't think so. I think that that ship has sailed. We left the opportunity open there for a few years and talked to some teams, but honestly, I only wanted to do it if there was a realistic shot at winning. I don't need another starter ring. I got a bunch of those. They're cool, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of risk to just go be a field filler, and I just don't have any interest in that. I'm too competitive, So I know at Indy, and we talk about it on the broadcast all the time. We say, hey, look, any of the 33 can win, and that's not true. But there are long shots, on the grid, and I didn't want to put myself in a position to be a long shot. So none of the properly competitive programs that we were talking to materialized in those sort of first 3 years. And after that, I mean, it'd be so tough to jump in now. These guys that are racing every weekend, and it's to get yourself up to that level, even with all the practice that you have at Indy, is very tough. And so I think it's safe to say that chapter is closed.
I want to continue. I want to look forward, the future of IndyCar. Um, if I was the director, if I was Mark Miles, right? If I'm the CEO of IndyCar tomorrow, I would like I would like to see a race in Mexico. I'd like to see a race at Interlagos. I think that'd be a really good show. Definitely more ovals. I think we need more ovals. I think we need to go back to Texas Motor Speedway because I remember I was rewatching the race yesterday and I was like, this is literally like this is the definition of the fastest racing on earth. I mean, you see cars going through by at Texas. So Texas should come back, in my opinion. Definitely a race in the East Coast, maybe like a Richmond or even a Baltimore, which is nearby where we are. Really interesting. Or even like the Glen or New Hampshire. So, if you were the director of IndyCar, CEO of IndyCar, what would you change?
Well, we need a new car, first and foremost, which is coming. They are working on the new car right now. I would try to, you know, th- this is an answer that doesn't take like reality into consideration. So just roll with me on this and know that I'm not like
Well, those are the
I'm
best type answers.
exactly, and I'm not trying to say that like this is what IndyCar should be doing today necessarily, because I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why what I'm about to say isn't possible to just do. But with the new car, I want to move away from hybrids and go to a big, loud, high horsepower engine that's much simpler and lighter, but louder and faster. I think we've lost a little bit of the spectacle in what is the greatest spectacle, in racing with the 500, just by the way these cars have sort of evolved. And I understand why they have, but I think there's room to improve certain things on the car side. I think expanding the calendar is a very important thing. And internationally, I think is huge. Mexico, look, I'd be surprised if we didn't go to Mexico at some point in the near future, just because it's been talked about so much. That country loves motorsports. We have a Mexican driver that competes for wins in 500s every year. His popularity has grown massively down in Mexico. They no longer have a Mexican F1 driver on the grid, so they're going to be kind of looking for that hometown guy to support. So I think IndyCar could absolutely pull a race off there. Interlagos is an interesting one. Hadn't thought about that one, but not a bad shout. I do think we need more ovals. I would love to go back to like Homestead. Another mile and a half would be good for sure. I loved Loudon when we ran there in 2011. I was super bummed that place didn't work. Watkins Glen, it's tough, man. We tried so many times and just nobody came. So I think we need to focus on the product first, a little more. keep spending on marketing. Like we got to keep pushing that side of things. Fox obviously did an incredible job in the build up to St. Pete, and we had a massive increase in ratings, right? Marketing works at the end of the day. And so I think we just need to double, triple, quadruple down our efforts on the marketing side, spend money to make money in that sense. And then once the popularity of the sport increases, we can look at some of these tracks that we've tried and failed, like Texas. Yeah, Texas had some great races. Nobody was watching. Nobody cared. So it's not worth risking drivers' lives to race in front of 6,000 people. It's just not. So and lose money doing it. So there's a tough balance between the passion of what you want to do and the economic realities of what you want to do. I would love to go to Montreal. I think that track is amazing. I think that city is amazing, and I think we could absolutely support another race in Canada. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things, but again, it's Mark probably wants to do all these things too. It's not as easy as just dreaming it up and making it happen. Unfortunately.
Um, One last thing before we end the episode, and then you have to go, of course. Do you have any questions for us?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm always fascinated. Like, if I'm honest, man, before I kind of became a professional and was spending days trying to get there and was worried about never getting there, and I thought about what I wanted to do with my life, I wanted to go to school for broadcast journalism because I originally wanted to write. I wanted to write for Autosport magazine. That was how I figured if I wasn't racing, how could I still have a career in motorsports and get to talk about racing and work in racing? And this weekly motorsports magazine out of England called Autosport, my dad and I subscribed to it. It would show up 4 weeks late most times, but I would still read it cover to cover, even though I knew everything that had happened. And that was what I wanted to do. So my question for you guys is kind of explain to me what a broadcast journalism. Are you guys in broadcast journalism? Like, what is your course?
So I'm a high school senior.
I'm a junior.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we're high
Is that what
schoolers.
you want to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, journalism is an opportunity. Primarily for me, it's like marketing a business within sports. But I'm totally interested in doing journalism. I'm a writer for my school newspaper. I actually wrote about IndyCar for my newspaper.
Amazing.
So
Yeah, and I'm taking the journalism class. I'm not technically part of the class yet, but our podcast is through the school newsletter, and that's definitely what I want to go into, sports journalism, and I want to go to college based around that major or just a communications major in general. And it's funny how our podcast actually started. Josh was writing an article for the school newsletter about the college football playoff back in December, and he interviewed me, and the interviews went so well that like we decided like we could give our takes and our analysis on sports, and we could do it at this type of level. And we've been recording and putting out episodes every week since then. So it's been a really amazing journey for us.
That's great, man. That's great. Where has good sports broadcast or broadcast journalism programs that you're looking at?
So it's complicated because Syracuse it would be the number one, and because I also want to swim in college, that kind of narrows down the search a little bit. So
Right.
I can't go to Syracuse because they don't have a swim program. Places like Boston and NYU, they do have sports journalism programs and also excellent swim teams. So places like there, Northwestern,
Mhm.
as well as a great program, and I'm actually looking at Emory University right now as well because they have a swim program that fits me really well. So those are my top options.
Very cool. And Josh, for you on the marketing and business side, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at Indiana. I actually got accepted into Indiana University. I haven't committed yet
Congrats.
due to financials, but I'm working on that. I'm doing what you guys do with sponsorship, trying to get a sponsor.
Yeah,
Um, Besides that, I also got accepted into motorsports management in Winston-Salem, which is in North Carolina. So like if I go there, I can be close to the NASCAR teams, maybe work with them,
for sure.
internship at them. And I also got accepted into an NYU internship for sports like marketing.
Amazing. That's great. That's great.
Um, with that, that's kind of everything that we wanted to talk about.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate you having me on.
But thank you for all you guys watching at home. I'm Joshua Lubaro.
Jack White.
This has been James Hinchcliffe, renowned IndyCar driver, race winner, pollster for the 500, podcaster, big yacht guy.
And Dancing with the Stars expert.
James Hinchcliffe, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Have a great
Thanks, boys.
have a great rest of
Appreciate
your day. And we'll see you later. Have a great one, James.
Thank you so much. You too.
I don't know if should I ask it? Should
You
I?
have to now.
All right, look, this is gonna be really personal. But do you like when you were racing? Okay, like okay. I don't want to come off as like this is like a really personal like question or whatnot. But like when you were racing, did you pee in the car?
Yeah, so drivers when you kind of start racing at a high level, especially on ovals, the doctors will tell you that if you hit the wall with a full bladder, it can rupture and that can be very bad. So they tell you if you have to go, just go. Now, I can say hand over heart in, when did I start racing cars? 2004. So in over 20 years of doing it, I've done it one time.
Oh,
I can
wow.
tell you there are guys on the grid that do it every race.
Oh.
It's like a comfort thing for them. They're weirdos. I don't know what to tell you.
You have a strong
But
bladder.
what's that?
No. I was just saying that you have a strong bladder then.
Yeah. Well, you just be smart about it, right? Like you know how hot the day's going to be. You hydrate. I mean, you start hydrating on a Thursday for a race on Sunday, and like most guys have it down to a science, so you kind of know. The only time I got screwed was because we had the race was supposed to be 80 degrees and sunny, and it was 60 and raining, and so I was overhydrated, and then we had a red flag for the conditions, so I was just sitting in pit lane for like an hour. We were stuck in the cars, and I was just sitting in pit lane. They wouldn't let me get out of the car. So like when you're driving, like your body understands that it's under stress and that kind of shuts everything off, right? So you don't really think about it. And you're out there, you're working, you're sweating, so it's easier. But I was just sitting in a cold, wet race car, and I bored, and I couldn't get out. So that was the only time I've ever had to do it. It's hard. It's really hard to do.
Mhm.
It's such like a mental block to just like let yourself do that. But then again, like I said, there's some guys that just do it every week.
I'm guessing Rossi does it every race.
It is not Rossi. No,
Rossi.
not Rossi.
Well,
I'll put it this way. I put it this way, but I'm not going any further. It's a Penske driver, and I'm leaving it at that.